Welcome everyone. Today we are very pleased to be talking with Gareth Cosker from the Microsoft Surface team in the UK to go through with us how he uses Squirrel to explain the sustainability benefits of the Surface product line to his customers and prospects. But before we start, I just want to take 2 or 3 minutes to give you the quickest possible overview of Squirrel and how it works with PowerPoint. This is important background for you to fully appreciate Gareth's story. So coming into Squirrel, the first thing we do is to import our spreadsheet. This is a tiny calculator based on number of visits to our website, conversion rates to sales leads and customers, and then an average price, which leads us to this number of total additional revenue. And it's that additional revenue we're going to display on our Squirrel project. So we add a text label to display it, and then we connect it up to the value in the spreadsheet by clicking this button here and saying it's that cell that we want to display. We can change the styling on that text. We're going to make it a little bigger, maybe format it as a currency with a $sign and 1,000 separator. I might give it a background, just grey, and make it bold. So now we have our value for additional revenue. And then the next thing we're going to do is take a second component, this time a slider, and we're going to say that slider is going to control one of the percentages in the spreadsheet, and it's going to be this percentage here, the 20% of the conversion rate of website visitors to sales leads. So just having done that, I can now preview this Squirrel project, and when I change the value of the conversion factor, we see it changes the additional revenue. If I come into test mode, then I can see both my project and the underlying spreadsheet, which is usually hidden in the final delivery of the project. And when we see this here, if I change this, you can see these numbers down here are all changing in accordance with the rules and the formulas in the spreadsheet based on that input of this new percentage that we're inputting with the slider. To make it look a little nicer, we can maybe add an icon above here that's going to give me, say, a dollar symbol, just to put that up there, make it a bit bolder. And then I'm going to add a little bit of text at the bottom, and it's going to say additional revenue. I might want to take all of those here and just align them up. So now I have my additional revenue, and I can just change it with the different conversion rates from visitors to sales. And then just by repeating those techniques a few times, I can create something like this. Very similar in principle, it just changes the other conversion factors as well and the price per customer with a little more color in some of the backgrounds. Once we have this as a Squirrel project, I can then publish it up to the Squirrel cloud, and I'm going to call this web traffic. And having published that, I can make it live so that it's shareable, and now I can share it either through a web link, so I can send this web link to anyone, they will be able to see that, but in this case we want to look what happens when I copy the PowerPoint ID. Because we can take that ID and then use it in PowerPoint once we insert the Squirrel add-in, take that ID, paste it in, and confirm. And hey presto, I have that Squirrel project sitting inside PowerPoint, fully interactive in the way that it was in the Squirrel Designer. And even if I go and present this full screen like a normal presentation, I retain the ability to interact with this and dynamically show the impact of the various changes in my parameters to the output in terms of additional leads, additional sales, and additional revenue. So with that background on how Squirrel can take Excel spreadsheets and turn them into remarkable visualizations inside PowerPoint, let's hear Gareth's story.
So, hello. Today I'm here with Gareth Cosker, who is a commercial executive in the Microsoft UK sustainability team. He's one of our Squirrel customers, and so we just thought that we would share Gareth's experience with Squirrel and what he's managed to do with it. Because it's a great story. But before we start on the Squirrel specific stuff, Gareth, perhaps you could give us a bit of background about yourself and your time at Microsoft and the role you're currently in.
Yeah, great to see you again, Donald, and great to be here. So background. Essentially, I've been in the hardware business for the best part of a decade. I've always had an interest in technology. And when I joined Microsoft as a Surface specialist at the time, Microsoft has a huge emphasis on sustainability. They have some very clear goals and targets and moonshots, if you like, that we're looking to achieve. And it kind of dawned on me while I was doing the kind of the role as Surface specialist that, you know, hardware is always that elephant in the room. There's always going to be a product carbon footprint. There's always going to be an energy demand. There's always going to be a drain on the natural resources in the world. And it's how, and I was thinking, how could we present Surface, the Windows 10 ecosystem, how can we present that in a very transparent way? That kind of led me into kind of talking more about Surface and sustainability. I was fortunate enough then to go to COP26 to represent Microsoft devices that we had on the stand there. And then more recently now, I kind of get into the realms of the commercials with our customers, where sustainability really does come into that as well when you're talking about customer negotiations and contracts. So that's kind of a little bit about me and to date what I've done kind of with hardware and sustainability.
Right. And so in your role in the sustainability team, what was the specific problem that you had that eventually you ended up solving with Squirrel?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. I think the challenge is, you know, hardware and everything that goes with it isn't a simple kind of thing. And I say thing. Data is the massive problem, right? If you are going to present to a customer and you're going to become a trusted advisor and you're going to be able to show transparency across the marketplace, it's not just Surface devices that you need to get the data for. You also need to get that for every other Windows 10 device out there, every other competitor within the marketplace out there, and formulate that and visualize that in such a way that the customer can then take that information and then do something meaningful with it. And when I say meaningful with it, make the right choices when it comes to sustainability, integrate sustainable procurement within their device selection. And really the challenge is how do you go about doing that? There's, you know, you can go onto the EnergyStar.gov website and pull off all of the yearly e-tech. That's the total electricity consumed by a device. You can do that for your washing machine, your tumble dryer, and you can do it for your devices as well. And so really going to that kind of public facing website and pulling the information, going to the Microsoft website and pulling the eco profiles for the certain Surface devices, going to the various other manufacturers in the market and pulling their eco. And you can see that there's a lot of information that you're pulling and it's a very manual. Once you've done that, how do you then visualize it? And so that's really the challenge. That's the problem that we faced. And that's the problem that I had certainly for the best part of 18 months now, in terms of how do I present that then back to a customer.
And I'm smiling because I know the answer to this question, but even if I didn't know the answer, you work at Microsoft. I know how the world works with data. So I would have guessed, even if I didn't know, that the place you would put all that data was into an Excel workbook. And obviously sort of what you're trying to, Excel workbooks are great for doing all the analysis, but lose a little perhaps in the, as you say, trying to get the story across to a customer. And I guess that's where Squirrel comes in on the journey.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, you know, let's face it, hybrid world that we now live in, even pre kind of COVID, you were still going to a customer site, albeit now it's virtual, and you were still presenting via PowerPoint, right? Or, you know, some other vendor, but, you know, I'm at Microsoft, so this is PowerPoint.
Yes.
And so what that then looks like is then how do you keep the flow of the conversation going when you're with a customer, either virtually or in person? If you're using PowerPoint as a tool to do that, then surely you have to look at a bit of software that can integrate into that PowerPoint.
Right.
Because what you don't want to do, and what I've seen numerous times, is people flitting out of applications. And when you're face to face, yeah, you can maybe get away with that, but I'm not so sure. But certainly virtual, you want to keep the flow going. You want to keep that customer engagement. And you want to be able to confidently have the tools when you're pitching remotely that allows you to then dynamically move between slides and actually show something visually.
Right.
And what I found is by working with Mel and yourself and the Squirrel team is that there is a very simple solution to this. Very, very simple. And if it's okay, it's probably best I show you.
Yeah, no, but absolutely.
Okay.
I was going to say.
Let me pull that up, and now we'll see the power of virtual presentations, I suppose. So, I mean, this is kind of just a little example of kind of how we would go about that with a customer. And essentially what we would kind of be looking at here is that I want to kind of touch on, well, okay, what is Surface and sustainability? Now, we have a very clear and strong message that we work with a lot of Windows 10 vendors, okay, and they do some great work for us and with us and in partnership. So this isn't an exercise of comparing, you know, and naming and shaming. This is an exercise really of just showing a customer that the choices that they make in devices are really important. And actually, it's a question when you start talking about sustainability is this notion of moving beyond Energy Star. And I talk about this a lot with customers because you can go out and get the Energy Star credentials of any device in the market. And how do you go about comparing those? What does that actually look like? You know, and really sustainable procurement being at the heart of everything that we do. So you can see now that I'm kind of presenting to you. There's a nice little quote here around, you know, how businesses and users embrace technology when they can trust it. That comes directly from our CEO and Chairman Satya. But then as we move through the slide deck, you can see that if I was to present this with a customer, I'm faced with a series of links that will take me outside of PowerPoint that will look at the various vendors in the OEM landscape, and you'll kind of see here that, okay, you've got the references there, you've got these links, you've got a link there to Energy Star, you've got a link to kind of the average energy cost in the UK, you've got a link to why there might be CO2 variations across devices. You can see it's quite complicated. But how do I then demonstrate the value of our product without leaving PowerPoint? Right. And that's where we kind of come to this solution where I'm kind of then looking at, right, well, I know what the product value adds are within an organization. I just need a tool to show it. So when we kind of then go on to this kind of tool, this is the tool that then we created.
And you're just got to be clear, you're still in PowerPoint at this stage.
I'm still in PowerPoint. Yeah, I haven't moved away from PowerPoint. And what you can actually now see is that I've got various drop downs in PowerPoint. So, for instance, I want to be able to demonstrate to a customer very simply, okay, so you're investing in our Surface Go device. Let's just put one on there at the moment. But you're then thinking about replacing your current infrastructure. Now, of course, you can see the names here. I'm not here to show that certain other vendors are doing something particularly bad. Yeah. What I'm here is to say, right, okay, well, if I was to pick a vendor of choice, whatever that might look like, and I could pick this one here, what I want to be able to do to the customer and show the customer is all of the information you saw on the previous slide, all of those links, I want to be able to bring that data that's within those links into PowerPoint. And this quite simply does it.
Right.
So what I'm now showing you is I'm showing you data from the eco profiles that we've put into Excel that now you can see when you compare like for like devices.
Right.
So in this instance, we're comparing a Surface Go 2 tablet with another vendor's device. You see, I put quantity 1 in there. It doesn't really make much difference. But you can see that there's an over 80% saving in the product carbon footprint. That's the CO2 emissions made that happen as a result of making that device. So if a customer was looking to compare, they need to then look at their current vendor and go out and find this information.
Yes.
So what you'll see is that then Surface, this straight away in the flow within the PowerPoint shows, well, I've kind of already done it, but I'm not going to tell you the vendors because that's not my place to do that. But what I'm going to do is present a compelling story that gets the customer thinking, right, well, I need to get that information. Now, if you look at it from a product carbon footprint perspective, They're going to make, in this example, an estimated over 80% saving in their product carbon footprint. So that's manufacturing, transportation, in-use usage, end of life management, all of that type of stuff that makes up that. And I'm not expecting you to kind of know all of that. But then the energy usage is really important as well. So the Energy Star website, which you saw on one of the links before, that then lists and houses a massive Excel spreadsheet, which then pulls all of the Energy Star credentials for every single device that's Energy Star accredited.
Right.
Clearly, I'm not going to go through all of that spreadsheet with a customer and go into Excel now. Clearly, I want to present that in a way that just keeps the flow. Now, we've done it with product carbon footprint, and you can do it now with Energy Star. So Energy Star, by moving over to Surface in this instance, there's potentially up to 70% saving in energy use for that device over the 3 years.
Right.
Now, you saw on the previous slide that I also then put the estimated energy cost, the cost of electricity. And so therefore, you've got a little bit of money saved, £9 per device. Now, clearly, if you were multiplying that by thousands of devices that an organization saves, there's a potential saving there. Yes. And again, that's for a customer to kind of go up and see. And really then what we talk about, and again, remaining in the flow, pulling in different data sets in one slide. And this is how Squirrel allows you to do this, is that, if I go back, sorry. So that's the flow.
See, that's a nice demonstration. You've gone to the next slide. You back
100%. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have to go to the next slide, right? You don't want to have to go to an external. So yeah, what I want to do is show Energy Star rating here. And this is the whole moving behind Energy Star. This is the reason why you might want to choose a vendor over another vendor, is what's their emphasis on creating highly efficient devices. And although, it might not be applicable to you, Donald, but, to a customer that's looking at buying a device and is looking to make the right choices, the device that they choose, actually, they want to be able to go out and sustainably procure that and show evidence as to why they've chosen a certain device. And in this instance, when you compare devices, and this is purely looking at Energy Star and how good they are, how much better they are within that category of device, you can see that our Surface Go is nearly 60% better than the entry Energy Star rating.
Right.
So if you're going to pick a highly efficient device, then logically you're going to pick a device that goes beyond Energy Star. And I always, to paint the story, I always kind of caption this with, think about driving a car. All right, this might be more relatable to you, Donald. You drive a car. Now, we all know that a Ford diesel or an unleaded car or a Tesla fully electric car they're roadworthy, right? They're compliant.
Yes.
They can go on the road. You have your MOT, you do all of this, they can go on the road. But you know that one may be more sustainable than the other.
Yes.
You know that one is run off renewable energy and one is run off petrol and oil and everything that they get out of the ground.
But interestingly, that I know that, but I have no idea the scale of that. I have no idea sort of how many times the Tesla is compared to the petrol, compared to the diesel. And so having something like this that it really sort of brings it home, I can see in sort of, as you say, when data comes alive, when it's visualized in a way that sort of really sort of like imprints on people's consciousness.
Absolutely, and this is the whole point, right? The whole point here is to be able to leverage Squirrel as that tool that integrates all of that data via Excel into a PowerPoint that gives this clear visual representation. Now, I mean, obviously, we're not naming and shaming anyone here, but this could be a Ford and this could be a Tesla.
Yes.
And that you're getting. So if you were a company that's picking and thinking about their car fleet and what cars to choose next to better serve the environment, by going out and generating that data, and by and companies like myself who want to pitch that to another organization, you're going to want to represent it in a very simple visual way. And that's the reason why this tool, it may look very simple, but that's a purposeful choice. Yeah. Because you just want to have a couple of cogs that moves the data around and shows the customer and take them on that journey without leaving the slide. As you saw before, when you leave the slide, it breaks the rhythm.
But also, it's important. You could have a slide that just said, you could have this all on a slide, but what the great thing about this being dynamic and based on the data that you say is in that spreadsheet,
Yep.
is it leaves open the possibility of a conversation. So if the customer says, well, actually it's not lambda but it's delta, or actually I've got a bit of lambda and delta, you can build up a scenario for them whereby they whereby they can see their thing coming to life. So there you've just added a new one, and you can say, well, what happens if I've got two things I'm going to replace with two different Surface devices? So it's dynamic, and presumably that helps with the conversation, as you say, either virtually or in the room with the customer, so they can see their sort of the way that they do things coming to life. And however much you prepare beforehand, say, well, this is your scenario. We all know that in a meeting like that, someone's going to say, yeah, but what about this department over here? We've got these. Would that make a difference?
Yeah, 100%. And and as you see now, I'm keeping the same standard device that the customer's interested in. I'm comparing it with different ranges within this lambda model. I'm then saying, right, okay, so it's not this, so it's not the 36 version that you're after. Actually, what you're thinking about buying is the 29. Dynamically changes all of the data.
Yeah.
It's linked within Energy Star, and it's all there.
And
I don't have to move.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed is that, like at the top with your scenarios, that you can preload sort of. So if you do have a complex environment, you can sort of preload a scenario for someone so they can see what's going on. So
yeah, exactly that. So you've got this, scenarios that the customer might say to you, well, actually, we use a device like this, and this. And they can potentially use this tool. They can go away and create it themselves.
Right.
Because, I can do that for them. I can then show, well, this is the information that you've given me, and this is me presenting it back to you. But you know what? The way it works is when the customer goes out and finds this kind of information.
Right.
I'll stop sharing my screen because I know that you've probably got the hint how we've said.
But before you do, well, okay, you have. But what we were seeing there before, I think it's important because most people probably wouldn't have heard of Squirrel, but that is essentially a dynamic user interface on top of an Excel spreadsheet. So really, the alternative you would have been to pop out to Excel, all that data in there. Yes, you could have put sort of drop downs and things in there, but you would have been outside PowerPoint. And the beauty of Squirrel in this instance is it's a streamlined interface that you can make what you want, and it just allows you to be able have a clean interface in front of the customer that allows you to make these scenarios clear and have an impact on them and their understanding of what you offer in terms of the sustainability.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the point of this is that you want a visual representation, and as you said, I can just leave PowerPoint, but as you know, within a customer call, you're not going to be able to just keep flitting. You're losing interest. What you want to do is keep that customer, keep that organization within that flow of that presentation, and yes, I could move out to another application that would be able to do exactly this. But the power for me, certainly when I'm with my customers, is being able to show them visually what we're talking about, but also get the customer thinking about, well, what about this product? And if the drop down, I just go to the drop down and change it. What about this product? Oh, actually, we're not looking at in the example set where it was the Surface Go. No, we're actually looking at a Surface laptop or a Pro or a different device within the range, and we can actually just do it there and then.
Right.
And they can see that that's the sort of thing that maybe they want to, if you think about a customer making faster decisions, if you think about the time of a sales cycle, you want to be able to, if they're saying, you don't want them to come back to you a day later and say, oh, actually, can you show me what it looks like on a laptop? Or can you show me, you got to kind of want to say, well, should we compare? Should we do this now?
Yeah.
And, and I can pull up the different device ranges. I can pull up the different other devices and say, have a play. Tell me what you're thinking. And then they can go away and say, actually, you know what, based on what Gareth's saying, we need to look at a tablet and a laptop.
Right.
And what I need to do is look at our current estate, and I need to go out and get the information for that current estate myself. And that's kind of where we've got to, and we've got a number of kind of customers that have done that.
Right. And the other thing about it that strikes me is that sort of, I mean, this is all web technology. It's web technology embedded in PowerPoint, and the new PowerPoint add-ins are great for doing that. So in theory, you could have gone to some technical team and said, could you develop me this application? But that would have taken a while, the specifications and all this sort of stuff. But also then that leaves you closed. And presumably with the Squirrel thing, because the only sort of logic in there is the spreadsheet, it means that you, as a sort of albeit sort of, you're obviously a career in technology, but you're I don't want to do you down, but you're not a developer, but a bit like me. But I'm happy in a spreadsheet, so you can change it and do things to it because it's based on Excel in a way that you couldn't had you been delivered as a standard web application.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and I quite like, you know, and what one thing I'm really grateful with your team is that, you know, the technical support from myself. Like, I was able to work with a member of your team and develop this in a very simple way, in a very quick and speedy time, you know, and that's, you know, someone who's, you know, kind of, I've reached out internally. I've reached out and asked, do we have anything? You know, and there's loads of different solutions that we could have possibly positioned, but they wouldn't have kept me in the flow. They wouldn't have kept me into the PowerPoint. They wouldn't have kept me presenting in a logical way to the customer. It would have meant I would have had to go outside of that application.
Right.
And so, you know, that's really important when you're looking at that use case. It's well, no, I don't want to divert from the story. We want to keep going down that path, and ultimately, you know, like we've said countless times, it's having a dynamic application built within PowerPoint as an extension, as a plugin that allows you to do that is what's key.
No, it's interesting. I've said this in many. I mean, I come from the business intelligence industry reporting for years, and I've always said that what you want end users to do is to get in, get what they need, get out, and get on with the job. And that applies here as too. You want in the flow, you want your customer to get the information they need in a way they can digest it. You don't want to dwell on the data. You want to dwell on what they need to know in order to make the right decision for them. So yeah, no, it's a great example. Now, talking about customers, I know that I've told you before, you've told some great stories about the impact that not on you and your team, but actually the impact this has had on some of your customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, I can't name specifics, you know, in terms of the specific names, much like, you know, the device specifics in the slides that I showed you. But, you know, but by speaking to a large multinational organization, you know, once you start floating the idea of, okay, well, this is the sort of thing that you need to look at, and we were able to demonstrate quite specifically the sort of things that they might want to go after, and they were able, you know, and they said, yes, absolutely, that's absolutely something that we need. And after presenting this, the customer then went out because they didn't believe me, right? That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. And to be honest, the customer in mind is much better on Excel than I would ever be. So they didn't believe that that's the sort of product carbon footprint savings or the energy savings. So they wanted to go and use their own data, which to me is gold dust, because that's what I want. I don't want them to believe me necessarily. I just want them to go out and get the data for themselves.
Right.
And that's what they did. And they had clear goals of reducing their environmental impact. So choosing products and services that had great sustainability credentials. They had a goal of reducing their device landscape, the amount of devices that they had. So they had consolidation in mind. And because this customer is a customer that isn't a mobile customer in terms of outside of their four walls, energy consumption was very important to them, because clearly they were going to have associates or advisors within that organization that can't just grab the Surface Go device, for instance, and just leave and go outside. They're confined. So they're always going to be at some stage on charge or doing something. So that energy consumption and reducing the amounts of charge needed was really important. And so actually, when they went to do the figures, what they found is that over the 3-year life cycle of device, they were looking at saving upwards of £750,000. So when you kind of factor that in to any procurement process,
yes,
it's important for them to, and what they found is by looking outside of the box and not just looking at that capital cost of device, that actually they looked at other areas and other benefits that device is that's going to produce, they can then see other savings in other areas. And so, that was really powerful for them, and they embarked on they'd already kind of embarked on that journey of buying devices, but this kind of cemented their decision. Right. So after the fact, they realized, okay, that's kind of what we made the right choice.
Fantastic. No, it's a great story. But as you say, it all starts with engaging them with the data, making them think, and then when they've done that, then they don't. As you say, you don't want them to be. You do want them to believe you, but actually, it's much more powerful when they go and do their own analysis. So yeah, no, that's great. So you have any other plans for Squirrel?
Yeah, so yeah. So in my new role, absolutely, yeah. There was always when I spoke to Mel before, there was always going to be another project, and I kind of had an idea. For me, there's a lot of data and there's a lot of Excels when you start positioning return on investment of devices. There's a lot of it's very boring. If you're going to go through an Excel and you're going to start talking about return on investment and doing this. And what I've identified is a document that we use is that it's not clunky. It's got a lot of data in. It's got a lot of reference points in. But what it is it's an Excel.
Yes.
And so if I'm looking to present return on investment or total cost of ownership, then I'm going to need a tool that's integrated into PowerPoint, exactly like I've done with the sustainability.
Right. Yes.
So the plans would be is how do I integrate that? What data do I need? How do I then pull those kind of data points in and then leverage PowerPoint and Squirrel to essentially position that in a visual way?
It's interesting because you talk about the Excel spreadsheet. I mean, and the world does its analysis and data gathering in Excel to a very large extent. But you see, the problem with sharing it is you're open to someone saying, "Oh, just could you look at? Can I look at the data? Can I look at the sheet?" And sort of and there's stuff that it's not that you want to hide it from people. It gets too complicated for the sort of presentation you're trying to run. And then if you want to actually, as you were saying earlier, if you want to let your customers use the data, and you can see the interface you showed in PowerPoint, then a customer could do that themselves. Whereas if you sent them the spreadsheet itself, you're going to get into all sorts of problems with it. So yes, it's just a nice way of, as I say, just putting a really streamlined interface on top of an Excel spreadsheet that allows you to communicate better with your customers. So yeah, no, it sounds great. Now, I know we're coming up against time, but there's one thing I wanted to cover, which is that you were saying that sort of last year. I'm not saying that this was all due to Squirrel. I'm sure it's due to your efforts as well. But you won an internal award at Microsoft on the basis of some of this.
No, it was quite cringy now, isn't it? Talking about it. But I suppose Microsoft's culture is built around growth mindset. It's built around going out there and understanding that kind of anything's possible. Our mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, right? And one of the challenges that we had, like I said, in the team was around sustainability and how do you quickly visualize this to a customer? How do you get a point across? How do you get that value across? And obviously the work that I was fortunate to be able to do within sustainability, and then the partnership that I had with Mel and the Squirrel team in order to develop this, really does then start supporting and helping other people, helping our customers, helping my colleagues and my peers. And then showcasing broader across different technologies within Microsoft what is possible with Surface and sustainability. Right. And as a result of that, yes, it sounds a bit cheesy, but as a result of that and the work that we then did, there's certain role model awards each year, and I was fortunate enough to win the role model for sustainability. And certainly this Squirrel platform was a part of that in terms of what we were able to do to support others.
Well, that's great, and I like it particularly because the way you describe it is sort of the growth mindset. It's allowing individuals to make a difference, and as we touched on earlier, one of the things that we see about Squirrel is it allows people, because let's face it, just about everybody in the world in business knows Excel, and then so what we see Squirrel as allowing people to do that bit more. and they don't have to reach out to a development team. They don't have to reach out to some more technical people. They can just do it based on their Excel knowledge and do exactly the sort of thing that you're doing. So it's a great story. So it's good for the Surface team. It's good for your customers. It's good for you as an individual. It's good for us to have a customer like you using the product. So yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gareth. Thank you so much for taking the time to share that with us. It's been absolutely brilliant, and we look forward to seeing your next ROI presentation inside PowerPoint, delivering out to your customers. So thank you so much for talking to us.
No, and thank you for taking the time to listen and inviting me. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Gareth.